Welcome to the Oral Health Podcast. Today's episode is slightly different as it has actually been recorded by a charity that we've been working with called Maggie's. Today we are going to be bringing you Jim's story. So Jim was diagnosed with mouth cancer after his dentist noticed 2 white spots as a result of a routine checkup. He recently sat down with a cancer support specialist at Maggie's to share with us his mouth cancer story. So Maggie's, if you aren't aware, is a charity which provides free cancer support and information in their centres across the UK and abroad, with more planned for opening in the future. This support can include managing practical things such as helping with money worries and emotional support through one-to-one sessions with professional staff and support groups. So you can find out a little bit more about them at maggies.org. We're very grateful to Maggie's and Jim for working with us, and we hope that you find Jim's story as eye-opening as we did.
Can we start by, can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
My name is Jim. I'm a recovering mouth cancer patient who is a member of Maggie's Head and Neck Cancer Support Group. And I'm here today to speak about what happened to me and how things are today.
Great, thank you. So can you tell us about your initial diagnosis with a mouth cancer?
My initial diagnosis of mouth cancer happened as a result of visiting my dentist for a normal checkup. This dentist noticed 2 white spots in the floor of my mouth and said, they might need a further look at. I'll recommend that you go to hospital and have them looked at. However, that didn't happen, and about 3-4 weeks down the line, I contacted my GP, and the GP said, nobody's given me any word about it. I'll contact the hospital. I contacted the Maltlands Hospital, and they had me in one Friday evening, 7:30 at night, which made me think they suspect something. And sure enough, I landed in Maltlands Hospital, 7:30 at night. 3 doctors sitting behind desks, and the lead doctor, Mr. Catton, asked me to open my mouth, and he sat down and says, it looks like mouth cancer. And then I was totally flummoxed, just totally shrunk. I didn't know what to say. And they said, don't worry, we'll see what we can do for you. Cut a long story short, I was recommended to come in for a biopsy. Following Tuesday, only a space of 4 days, we took a biopsy, and that was confirmed on the Friday that in fact I had mouth cancer. Mr. Catton then seen me and said, we will have to get you in as soon as possible to do surgery. And they said the surgery won't be light. There's quite a bit in that to expect. Within the space of a week, so that's all round in the space of about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, from first being diagnosed, I was in the operating theatre, and they already knew, had said to me, your teeth will have to come out, and I was aghast at that because then I've had quite well I did my teeth, and they says, well, we'll definitely have to take out the bottom set. So they took out my bottom set of teeth as part of the operation. An operation which lasted 13 hours. And when I came out of the operation, I had no idea how far extent this operation had been. They had took out the teeth, they had opened up the bottom of my tongue, cleared the floor of my mouth. They had took out lymph nodes from my neck all the way down to my shoulders on either side. They had opened up my arm and took a patch of skin out my arm all the way up and implanted it into my mouth and my tongue, and then took a piece of my stomach and put it on the arm and patched it up as it is today. Recovery was long and tedious. The recovery took a couple of weeks in bed, followed by feds and pegs and drips. Couldn't speak. And literally it took months. I had to go to classes to learn how to speak properly because of the swollen tongue. The tongue it felt like an apple, a potato in your mouth. It was just solid. So the recovery took a long time. I was very much helped in that by the staff at Monklands and various clinics. They also recommended that I visit the Maggie's Head and Neck Cancer Support Group, who were wonderful. There's a group of people in here who had all been through similar experiences as myself, and speaking to them and hearing their stories and seeing their recovery. One of the first things that happened was meeting a woman who had been 15 years away from an operation. And that was a light that gave me hope to say that there's a future after this. If she can get 15 years, perhaps maybe you can too. So that was how the recovery took. Obviously, it's an ongoing thing. Nobody knows what's round the corner. The best thing is to, if you have any questions, to come to these groups. Recovery took a long time, even things like lifting my arm. I couldn't raise this arm beyond there. And it took a long time before I could actually extend it there. Some patients don't ever get the full motion again. I have. I've tried very hard to do exercise of all types. The speech has come back. It's not the end of the story in terms of things don't happen, because that surgery took place in 2015. 3 years later, again at a routine checkup, we spotted another couple of white spots in the bottom of my mouth. And I just thought, I said, oh, it's back, it's caught up again. It turns out it was called severe dysplasia. And Mr. Catton says, we will try and laser that out. And that's what they did. They lasered that out because if left alone, that dysplasia can develop into full-blown cancer. But thankfully, it looks like they managed to get it out in time. But it was just a check, a reminder that you can never say 100% clear. You don't know what's it to do in the future. Since then, till now, I've only had one further piece of minor surgery. About 2 months ago, just over 2 months ago, I came to the Monklands Hospital to have a bit of surgery on my tongue, this tongue flap that I have underneath. Inside it, there are tissues which work constantly 24/7. There's nerve endings or tissues inside the tongue, which are very annoying, or which I live with, but they can't keep me up at night and keep me awake for hours at a time. And the surgeon, Mr. Walker, attempted to relieve some of that, so they cut into each side of my tongue to cut at the roots of some of this. The outcome hasn't been 100% because the nerves, the tissues are still there, but I feel as if there's less of them here than there were. So currently it's a case of just live again with what you have and let's see what's around the corner. So that's where I am today in terms of my own recovery. It's been a miss not having the group for almost a full year, but the group has got back together the past 2 months, so it's good to get back to Maggie's once a month for the meeting again. And it's just good to see the people, all my good friends, and hear how they are getting on and listen to their stories. And I'll be forever grateful to those people for all the help. And there we are, that's me.
Thank you. Gosh, that must have been a bit scary, the having those white spots again. What did that what did that do to you, kind of emotionally, psychologically? Was that really not a very nice period, I imagine?
It was very difficult. Again, thankfully, after the diagnosis of the spots, until such time as Mr. Carton came back with the result. It was only a space of 7 to 10 days. And they said to me, my biopsy shows that it's not full-blown cancer, it's what they call dysplasia. It's with an SIA dysplasia. And it comes in 3 grades. You have what they call severe dysplasia. There's a very high chance that that could turn into full-blown cancer again. So it even looked like the original spots, because I looked in the mirror at my own mouth, and if we see the 2 little white spots in the floor, it looked the same, but this time round there was no surgery in terms of cutting it in. It was removing that by laser. So after it, I'm saying, is this it? And they said, well, we'll always have to keep checking. You'll have to keep coming back to the clinics to have your mouth checked out to make sure there's no further recurrence of this. So that was 2018. So it's now 2021. 3 years down the line, there's been no recurrence. So 2015 was my original surgery. 6 years later, I'm still here. Still have issues with that with the mouth, of course, and it's a case of always having to check up, taking oral care on a daily basis. I sponge out my mouth. After every meal, I've got to clean my mouth out, make sure it's tip-top. And I have my house. My wife and that checks my mouth once a week. She has a look in it. Even when we see the clinician about once every 6 months or so now, we've got to come in to see Mr. Walker, and he checks up to see that. In between times, we have our own look at home and told if we ever see anything, we phone Monklands immediately and ask to be seen. And that's how it happens. So it's been alert. It doesn't overwhelm my life. It's just something I can live a full life. In terms of my actual social life, I'm a walker now. I do walk about 3-4 times, depending on the weather. I go for sort of 10 to 15 kilometre walks 3 to 4 times a week. I've joined a walking group. I'm back playing my bagpipes. Although I'm not in the pipe band anymore, I've stepped down because of the recurrence of a dysplasia in 2018. I had been back playing in the full pipe band and competing again. But now I play for my own leisure. I play in the house. Maybe about 2 or 3 times a week I'll have an hour or so session not playing the pipe. So between that and my walking, I used to go to the gym up before COVID. COVID stopped my gym because I used to do 3 or 4 hours a week to the gym. And that was all planned to help me physically and mentally to get better, to try and stave away any recurrence of cancer. And that's how I lead my life today. I have a good life, a good home life. I see family restricted now because of COVID. But
I'm really pleased you're still playing the bagpipes, because that was going to be one of my questions.
yes, that's it. I've been playing them since I was aged 11 up till now. So 64 years later, I'm still playing. I'm playing not too bad actually. I might be dragging, but it sounds okay. It's good. I'm pleased with the standard. So I still get my enjoyment out of it. I really do. I love this instrument and it's my hobby. And just to be able to do them, it's sort of saying, despite all that's happened, to still be able to play my pipe is marvellous. It really is. I enjoy it.
I'm pleased for you. Can you take me back to when you were originally diagnosed? I don't know what you think about this, but for me, I don't think there's a huge amount of awareness about mouth cancer. It's not one of those ones like breast or prostate or lung cancer where you hear quite a lot about it, and you kind of know the signs, and it's kind of drummed into us as a society to know the symptoms. can you take me back to kind of what went through your head when you were first told it might be mouth cancer, and how you were feeling
Yes.
at that moment?
As far as I knew, I had no idea what mouth cancer was. I heard of throat cancer, and people I had known, or I do know, who have throat cancer, normally have symptoms of sore throats and lumps and that in their neck and things. With mouth cancer in my case, I had absolutely no symptoms, and no idea I had anything to do with cancer or mouth cancer. I merely went along to my dentist for my annual checkup, just to have my mouth looked at, my teeth. And he spotted these two little spots. And he never mentioned cancer or what it could be. It just says, those two little spots, could be ulcers. Perhaps it needs further looked at. I put through a recommendation that the hospital examine me. And that was it. I came away from there with no issues in my head or no worries really, thinking that it's just a couple of ulcers, they will go away. But as I said, Matt, 4 weeks later, the hospital hadn't contacted me, my doctor hadn't contacted me. I don't know whether the follow-up from my dentist hadn't happened the way he said he would recommend it. To this day, I don't know if communication broke down there, but it was only myself. I sort of said, let's look at that. I never felt any pain. There was no issues in that in my mouth. And it was saying that to my wife, have a look at my mouth and see if you can see. And she says, oh yes, those two white dots are still there. And that's when I said, I really have to have a look at this. And that's when I phoned my GP and asked to see him, and told him that 4 weeks prior to this I'd been to the dentist and that. And when he looked at him, and again, he never mentioned cancer. He just says, just to be sure that it's lasted this length of time. It was because of the length of time it lasted 4 weeks. That perhaps there was something more than just ordinary mouth ulcers. And it's only then when I went to see Mr. Catton and the team on that fateful Friday evening, and he was honest and straight. He did not hide behind anything. He just came over and put his hand on my shoulder and he says, that's mouth cancer. I'm sure of it, but we'll have to double check it with a biopsy. And I was stunned. I was flabbergasted. I could not speak. Both myself and my wife, we came away because she was in the room with me. We came out silent. We'd hardly speak to one another. I didn't know what to say because this idea of cancer, this terrible word, it frightens us. The idea of having cancer and not knowing what stage it was. What had started my mind working overtime was, why was I called in at 7:30 on the Friday evening, a very unusual time, into a ward, not into a clinic, but up into a ward, into a side room with 3 consultants. So I had this mind working overtime, what's happening. As I said, thankfully, Mr. Carton had me back in the space of a week. He told me, give me a biopsy. I had the biopsy on the following Tuesday, and then back to see him on the Friday. So 1 week later, he had the results of that biopsy to confirm that it was mouth cancer. And he said to us, hopefully you have been caught very quickly. The problem is, given time it spreads, and because of the type of cancer and the grade of cancer they have, it can spread very, very quickly. And therefore we have to do something immediately. So I'm recommending you have oral surgery. And that's when it took off. It was only a case of him saying, there are people who have been through this. There's a centre called Maggie's, which I knew about because I'd already visited Maggie's through previous prostate cancer. So I did know that about support groups and the benefits and that of them. But he had recommended support for that too, but very, very quickly I was in again in the space of another week. I was in for surgery. And the rest of it was a case of, this happened, you have to face up to it, you have to fight it and do the best you can, do everything in that to help the people who are helping you. And that was my mentality. So if they said to us, well, you've got to watch and live a clean life and help yourself in every way, mentally and physically and also, I'll do that. You know, if people are fighting for my life, I've got to fight too. And that is my attitude. And if I can help others too, I can tell them that it's happened to me and what the prospects are. And my prospects are good. I'm 6 years of happy living a full life already behind me, and I'm hoping there's plenty more to come.
One of the things that strikes me whenever I speak to somebody who's gone through treatment for breast cancer is how particularly invasive and awful the treatment tends to have to be. You mentioned yourself 13-hour surgery, that you needed to have speech therapy and be fed through a peg for a while. Were you shocked?
The treatment was a shock. Mr. Carton, I believe, tried to explain prior to the operation how invasive it could be, but that was only the tip of the iceberg as far as I'm concerned. Looking back upon it, the surgery is mountainous. There's loads of surgery, and it's all to do with the spread of cancer. Cancer spreads through the body, through the lymph system, through the lymph nodes. Lymph nodes carry it through the lymphs around the body. And if the cancer escapes from its primary source, in this case, and fall down through, down and that into our organs and that throughout the body, it can go to the brain as well. So the surgery is an attempt in that to stop it from spreading if it has already spread. That's my understanding of it. The surgery to do that is really a lot. There's so much in it, I had no idea. And without detailing it, Mr. Carton had been trying to give me an idea that it could be quite a bit. It did not explain the whole thing, just how much it was. Things like cutting from ear to ear, opening all this and taking bits out of in their neck and stitch this all back up. All that type of thing, and as I said, the lymph node systems and all of this, there was so much in that removed, partially removed. And the recovery part of that's all to heal. And it took months to heal, to start eating again. Part of the recovery in oral cancer too is the fact that when they have removed all your teeth, and I'm a person who had a full set of teeth, top and bottom, all my days I looked after my teeth. And so the loss of my bottom set of teeth was a big deal. And thankfully I was sent to the dental hospital in Glasgow. They took up to 2 years time in this hospital to replace my teeth with this synthetic press-in set of implants. It's like tired on a couple of pillars. I've got this implanted set in the bottom. My eating ability is never as good as it was with my natural teeth. I can now eat a good bit better. I still have limited foods, certain foods I can't eat are too difficult for me to eat. To learn to eat again, as I said, for the first 5-6 months, I wasn't being fed orally anyway. I couldn't actually pass food or any sort of food in my mouth. It was all in pegs and things like that, fed from bottles, drips at night in my own house. But through that part, once I started eating again, it was all soft foods like porridge and mash and things like that. But now I can sit down and eat full food, a full breakfast, lunch, and dinner, no problem. You can eat most foods. So that's all part of the learning process again. You have to learn to talk again. You have to learn to eat again. And you've learned to exercise again. There's all a real learning curve in that too. The surgery itself takes a long time to heal. I had no idea that oral cancer would have those implications, both from the surgery and from the recovery.
Sorry about the disruption there, Jim. There's 4 people in my house doing work, so I had to let them in while you were mid-talking. I didn't want to interrupt, but I was still listening, but apologies. In terms of, everything that you just said there about your treatment and the recovery, how important was it that you found a support group with similar people who'd gone through similar things and were kind of had experienced something that you'd experienced as well? How important was it to your recovery emotionally for you to have found that group?
Very, very important. The importance of it is about 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, speaking to your consultant once every 3 months and then once every 6 months. And you can't possibly ask them all the questions or all the answers that you want. In between times, you're living from day to day and things pop up in your head concerning your mouth cancer, the recovery extent, all sorts of things, worrying about recurrence. In between times, if you've got a support group, you're long learning with people who have been there ahead of you and who have had the same issues or the same worries in their head. And you can talk to these people and they will tell you what happened to them or what didn't happen to them. We exchange stories, we exchange experiences, true experiences, speaking to the primary candidates, the people in that who have had it. I said earlier in that about the first example ever I got was a lady who had been 15 years. She was the longest person alive recovering from oral cancer, because you hear rumours and you read things on the internet about oral cancer being one of the deadliest and limited time expectancy. But when you hear about somebody and meet this person and they're full of cheer and they turn around and say, oh, 15 years, what? 15 years? And you say to yourself, well, if somebody had offered me 15 years and I took the hand off them, and I grabbed that opportunity. So it gives you this sense of, if she can do it, perhaps I can do it. So it's this other thing from a social point of view is, we've had a couple of good outings in that with a head and neck support group. We've been bus runs and that to various places and went out for meals together where we socialised. And to see all these people so happy to have their lives back and their partners not with them. And the partners are immense, and the partners have been so supportive. I sit at these meetings, and the beauty about the meetings is that it's not just the patients, as I call them, who are there, but the partners are there too, and we know each other. There's a mixture of partners who know each other, and they phone and socialise even when the meetings, even from home, will be on texting and telephones and Facebooks and stuff like that. So we keep in touch. We know what's happening, and we know that if anything happens, one of our group, the rest are there to help. Over the years, unfortunately, we have lost a few members, tragically, and that really, really sore and personal when we didn't lose these people. And wave attending funerals and that too, a way of that to help the bereaved as well. A big loss, but that's what we do. We're there for support. We know we're not alone anymore, and that's how I view it. All of these people.
And do you have any advice or words of encouragement for anybody who's recently been diagnosed with a mouth cancer?
I would say if anybody has been diagnosed with mouth cancer recently, I would hope they have the strength and the will to proceed with whatever surgery is recommended for them. I do think, from my own point of view, that I know there are radiotherapy treatments for certain things, but that's a local thing. If you have been recommended for surgery, if they say to you it's surgery you need, I would say go ahead with it. Most of the people I know who have survived and who are surviving are fortunate enough not to be offered the surgery. I think surgery is only offered when we know that there is a chance that the cancer can be contained in that to the oral area and that it's not spread into secondary places. And if that is the case, the point is, as quick as it can be done, we've got to say, yes, please do it now and take that opportunity. And look at the people who are living full lives because they took that route. They cannot ignore it. They cannot waste time or pretend it's not hurting us, it'll go away. It doesn't go away. It's got to be faced up to. That's how I see it. And I would urge anybody not to do the same. Yeah.
Would you recommend any kind of support that's out there for people who are going through a diagnosis and treatment?
Well, anybody who has a diagnosis, one, they've got to ask the doctor to recommend that they be seen by an oral cancer unit specialist, such as they have here at Monklands Hospital. My initial man that I met, Mr. Catherine, to me he's a saviour. He saved my life because he diagnosed my mouth cancer in the space of 10 seconds, confirming that, of course, never a biopsy, but he was an expert. He had one look at it and knew instinctively that was mouth cancer, and knew instinctively, because of his experiences, what had to be done not to stop that. And that's what the people who have fears about mouth cancer have got to be diagnosed quick by an expert. But follow that up and that with the surgery. Even in the short space of time waiting for surgery, what I didn't do at that time, because I had no idea what it was. I could have went straight from Mr. Captain's diagnosis to the Maggie's Centre, not to the support group, and spoke to the people in here. The staff in Maggie's over here at Monklands consists of nurses with an absolute wealth of experience. They have been working inwards where cancer and that was the main problem. They have first-hand knowledge of the work in that in there, but also because they help and assist in that and running the cancer support groups, they can sit down and counsel on a one-to-one prior to your operation, prior to any surgery, and tell you what to expect. So perhaps the shock that I had when I went for my surgery wouldn't have been as big a shock in that at the time had I been visited a Maggie's head neck support group who may have been able to tell me, be prepared for something big. That might have helped me. But I believe this particular group we're talking about, that was 2015. I think this particular group that I'm in only assembled itself in 2015. I was fortunate to be one of the first members of the group in a way, so I benefited from there. But people now will benefit even more because the group exists before their diagnosis and not the other way about.
That's really interesting. Yeah, thank you, Jim. And I guess, would you encourage people to seek out Maggies, seek out some support before, as soon as they can after they've been diagnosed?
Yes, that's I, as I said, once you have been diagnosed or even examined by the doctor, if a doctor of any sort says, that doesn't look good, what's in your mouth doesn't look good, they might not be saying that is cancer, but they'll be saying there's something that has to be looked into, something that has to be investigated. If you have any worries at that time, go ahead and visit Maggie's then, even before the diagnosis. Prepare yourself for it, because these people are professional. They can tell you exactly what to expect. They'll tell you that they can do nothing until such times as you see a consultant and have a professional examination, followed by a biopsy if possible, to confirm if it is cancer or not. So there's no harm in going. Supposing it turns out not to be cancer, you're fortunate if that is the case. There's no harm at all not to go and have the weight taken off your mind by speaking to people who know all this. And that's where the know-alls are. The know-alls Maggies, they're in here in Maggies. And then, of course, the group itself, actual patient's ex-patient, the support group members, once they're inside them and their partners, all sorts of questions can arise. Any question that's in their head, I'm sure somebody else is sorting it. Somebody else will have an answer of some sort. And so the help is there. So I would recommend, don't try and do it alone. If you try to take all this on in yourself, you will get so down and depressed that will have a negative effect in that on your illness, whatever that turns out to be. So be positive about it, face up to it, and get all the help in that to turn it into a positive move.
I really like that. And then if you could describe Maggie's in 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
3 words. They are so warm, so kind, and so helpful.
I like
Warm, kind, and helpful.
That's really nice. And is there anything else? Oh, sorry, you
the
go.
Staff, I've got to know the staff on a one-to-one. I know all their names, I know all the ladies, the nurses that are there. And I've got admiration for their qualities. They are lovely people. They are gifted. They're gifted human beings. They've got a warm presence about them. All their education, their knowledge, their ability not to listen to you and then to offer the best of advice. They are so good. They are so good. Each and every one of them, I cannot say I've met one that's anything other than terrific. That's something I feel about them. They really are the best of people, caring and supportive, and informative.
And if you, we're sort of reaching the end of the interview, although I could talk to you all day, but is there anything that we've missed that you wanted to touch upon? Is there anything else you wanted to mention, particularly around kind of being this Mouth Cancer Action Month coming up?
too many people like myself in the past know nothing about mouth cancer. They don't understand that it can happen to anyone, absolutely anyone. One of the first questions a person asks when they have mouth cancer is, why me? Why did it happen to me? In this day and age, the first two questions a person will ask you is, are you a smoker? Well, in that case, I said no. Because smoking is obviously, even to a person that's not in the medical profession, a well-known accelerator in the act of cancer. It invites cancer into all sorts of areas of the body, mouth included. And the second question you're asked then is, do you drink alcohol? And in that case I said, no, I don't drink. If I could count the years, probably 25 years ago, probably at least, was the last time I drank. So, the medical profession in my case couldn't turn around and say to me why I got mouth cancer. But what they did say is, there are changes in that within your cells that can happen over a period of years, decades in fact. It does not turn into cancer until years down the line. People who have habits such as drinking and smoking especially tend to suffer from mouth cancer much more, because that seems to accelerate this distortion of the cells and that into cancerous cells. So it's a case of, just because you don't smoke or drink, or because you don't do anything negative, none of us can 100% say we'll never get mouth cancer. That's the biggest lesson I've learned. Point is, be aware that it can happen, and knowing more about it. Perhaps if the public in general knew more about it, it could help in that, and people be more aware of it and more ready in that to do something about it. That's how I feel.
I think that's such an important one, isn't it? Because there is definitely an association with, well, I didn't know drinking, but certainly smoking. There's that preconceived idea. So it's definitely a really important message that anybody can get it, and it doesn't matter what your lifestyle choices are. Yeah, I think that's really important. Thank you, Jim. Is there anything else before we finish up? I think we've had a good chat, and I think we've got lots of content that we can use. So thank you so much.
One more thing that I've got to say, because my partner, who has been with me all through this, from the diagnosis right till today, has had to endure my recovery, not just endure it, but assist my recovery all the way. And every interview I've had with a doctor in the medical profession regarding my health, she insists on attending, and I am so grateful that she does. 2 sets of ears are better than one. If the shock of hearing something puts me into limbo, she can pick up on some of the stuff that was said that I can't. So that's just a small slice of how important it is for the partner to support the person who is diagnosed. And that's all I'd like to say there.
She sounds like she's been very supportive. Sounds like an amazing lady. Well, thank you so much, Jim. That was really, really good. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I wish I could talk for longer. I wish we could just sit here all day and have a chin wag.
Go to mouthcancer.org. You can also visit the Mouth Cancer Foundation's website, which is mouthcancerfoundation.org. And of course, if you'd like to learn more about Maggie's and all the help that they provide cancer patients, you can go to maggies.org to learn all about them. Thank you, Jim, for providing your story.